1934. Now, it's only yourself I tell. 1934. I believe on a Saturday morning I was born, and I spent that's in Ballyfahy, in the little old house that looks an awful lot different now. It looks lovely actually, but it was just a nice place. As a matter of fact, I think in that particular area, to me, the nicest old place in the world. I think it is the greatest place in the world. It's in the parish of Bunnanan. My father was Frank Regan. And Frank was a fiddle player. You rarely find somebody now that is just a fiddle player or just a flute player. That they play so many things. They play more than one instrument. Most people. Well, he didn't. And I think the reason for that was he had a fiddle and he probably hadn't money to buy anything else. And that was probably the reason. But that old fiddle was hanging on the wall one side of the fireplace in the kitchen. But that's where I got from, and that was just, he didn't you might think teach me to play. He didn't. I just listened to him. Where we lived is in a very country place, and there's if you wanted to go out anywhere at night, well, the only place you could go really was maybe visiting a neighbour's house or something like that, because there isn't anything else there. But the fact that people were at home a lot at night, there was always a lot of music in the house because other musicians came in. I was just thinking of today, Mick Finn, that's Fred Finn's father. Mick was explaining one time that they had a party in their house. And he was telling Mick, he was a lovely man and he was very funny. But he was talking about there were so many people at the party. And he said there were so many people in the house. There were so many people, he said, in my house. I didn't, for a few minutes, he said, I didn't know who the house belonged to. Fred was a regular visitor. We hadn't Mick as often as we had Fred. There was a fiddle player who actually lived beside the Finns, John William Hunt, fiddle player as well. And there was another man lived in that area as well. He played it wasn't the accordion, he played the melodeon. We knew him as Mick Doyle, and he was a nice melodeon player as well. But Mick Doyle wasn't his name. He was Mick Davy. But there were a lot of Davies in that area, and his mother was Doyle, so they just called him Mick Doyle. And he used to visit a cousin over at Bunnanan at the village, and sometimes he'd be going across the fields and he'd drop into our house, and my mother would make him a good tea or something for him. But there was Bat Henry from near Ballymote, fiddle player, and Willie Mulligan, flute player, near Ballymote as well. There was a man. There was a man used to call just occasionally, wouldn't be that often. He played The flute, as far as I can recall, was the name of Gannon from Killavel somewhere. I don't remember too much about him. But there was, then we had Martin Wynne and his sister Bridget. Certainly Martin was the kind who, he did like to think when he played, if he was in your house and he was playing, he did like to think that people listened. But he always said, you know the way yourself, that some people say you're playing or you play some tune or something and somebody is going to say you played that beautifully. Well, Martin would always come up and say, oh, well, you'd need to hear so-and-so because he plays it much better than what I do. And that was the way he was. Martin was very, very gentle. So was Bridget. Bridget was a bit more of a character. Bridget played, she was a lovely flute player too. She played the pipes, but I haven't much memory of how she was as a piper. But she was a very nice flute player, whistle player, and fiddle player as well. And she would get up and dance. She would dance as well. And they were just like that. They were just wrapped in music. There was always loads of musicians. And you would, as McFinn said, you would sometimes wonder who did the house belong to. But I could never say I played like anybody or anything because I just done my own thing, just the way I was able to do it. But that's, if I didn't, and then my brother Mick, he learned. Mick was I could never hope to play as well as he did. I suppose it would be strange if I didn't learn to play. I do remember, I think it's probably in that where there'd be people and there'd be a great session of music going on in the house. And when you were a child and you had to go to school and whatever else, a time came when you had to go to bed. But you'd go to bed, but you'd be in bed, but you'd be still listening. And you'd just listen. I mean, the house wasn't that big. And there was where I slept, the bedroom was at the back of the kitchen where it was all happening, But you'd be listening to all that stuff after you went to bed. And you would ask the next day, you would ask things about something somebody played or something, you were curious about it. The two first tunes I learned to play, one was Finnegan's Wake, or my father called it Tim Finnegan's Wake. And the other one I learned around, I would say that time, and I learned it on the whistle, Made on the Green. That's the one, yeah. And I learned to play that on the Clark's whistle. I just loved the old Clark's whistle. Again, my mother wouldn't, she wouldn't have an awful interest in music at all. Um, what she would, there was, she would be interested more in songs, singing, and that kind of thing, like the McNulty family and people like that, and she liked that.
Oh, tonight in fancy come and take a trip across the sea, and meet our old companions in the place we long to be. For stamped upon our memory are the friends we used to know. So just tonight we'll revel in the thoughts of long ago.
That was not long after, say, my father died, and I suppose if that didn't happen, I would probably never have gone there. There was a house we used to go to. There were people from Tubbercurry, who was Tommy Ross and his wife, and we used to go there. And they used to have the session of music, not too often, but they would have it. And we used to meet up with other people. There was an accordion player, Paddy Bon O'Brien, funny enough, was his name. He used to play the accordion, and he was a great character. Just a great type of a person. But well, I suppose I made the best of it while I was there. But I wasn't happy there. I met Joe in 57. I can actually tell you it was the 7th of April 1957. It was a funny kind of a meeting. I met him on a bus, and he gave me his seat. But that was 57, and we got married in 58. You know the way you talk about things from years back, and suddenly it doesn't seem all that long. You know, that's over 60 years ago. But it doesn't seem like it's over 60 years ago. But again, that the meeting on the bus wasn't kind of where it all began. Again, it all began with music. Joe visited our house, and he was going to a place, he was going down to Cavan, a place called Bon Boy. I think it was like a small hotel, but I'm not sure. And he asked me, would I come and play at the concert. That's what happened. And I did that. And there's strange things kind of that happens. We met a lovely young fellow down there who was a lovely, absolutely beautiful accordion player. And he was, at that time, he seemed about 17 or 18. And he was just and his name was Tony O'Dowd. We had a son called Tony O'Dowd. Now that Tony O'Dowd died when he was about 22. And our Tony died when he was 51. So there's strange sort of things. But that was the beginning of that kind of thing. And again, this thing of music and music sessions kind of, there was it was in a different place, but it was all kind of much the same as before. And it all began again. and you just had people coming and playing music, and Joe had a lot of friends, musicians. You know, it's before I ever knew him, and they were all around, and they'd all come around, and you know, it was great. Now, going back to my father again, when Martin Wynne used to come to our house, and I won't say what I was going to say. Martin used to come to our house, and Martin would stay until the next morning. You know, there was no going home, unless my mother started blacking out the fire in the kitchen. But my father, while he was alive, he was only 56 when he died. And Martin used to come in, and himself and my brother Mick were great mates, and they were combining their music, and they were doing more than that with it. And they were putting their interpretation on certain things. And Mick would be out up in winds maybe of a night. And the next day he'd say to my father, "Oh, I want to play this tune for you now, you know. And this is the way Martin played it," you see. And that's my father used to get in this kind of a nearly an anti-Martin and Mick mood. But what he used to say, he'd listen to it, okay. What do you think of that, you know? Yeah, yourself and Martin will fix all them tunes. Sure. And there would be probably putting little things into tunes that he never would do, or that maybe he couldn't do it, I don't know. But he didn't like that. And that is, I think a lot of people still do that. There's one particular friend of mine now, I won't mention his name, and he's forever at that about the way people are playing and what they're doing with tunes, and it's awful things they're doing with tunes. And not very long ago, maybe might be 2 years, nearly going in 2 years ago, he told me he had visited Ben Lennon, and he was talking about the way Ben was talking about tunes, and about that Ben was saying about certain people, how certain people never changed their style of playing. And one of them was Sheila O'Dowd. And she was a lovely fiddle player. He said, "And the next time you're coming down, will you bring her down?" Will you bring her down? Now, I wouldn't have been looking forward to this at all. But anyway, as it happened, we never got to that. And poor Ben. And Ben went off in a lovely way as well, when nice and sudden, and at 90 something. Lovely man. But there is that. I think if I were to, I can at times now, I can be critical at times. And I suppose most musicians are like that. But I wouldn't be critical of what people do with tunes, because there's always, everybody thinks people like to do and that with tune. But I think the thing of the tempo that it's played at, there's a lovely thing, as we know, of Kevin Burke. Has a lovely kind of easygoing kind of style. Now, I won't talk about fingering or anything like that at all. It's just this nice comfortable way of playing, and I like that. That's really nice. While sometimes maybe the faster playing of a tune doesn't do anything for it. That book, well, God rest Desi Collis. Desi was lovely. Wasn't he a lovely man? And we'd been up in Riverstown. There was a session in it. This is a few years back now, and we were coming home, and there was some tune or other came up, and I was lilting the tune or singing the tune or whatever at that time. And I said, you know, that it was actually Michael Carroll was up there, and Michael had played something, and I said I didn't hear that tune for so long. As a matter of fact, I'd forgotten the tune, and I said, I suppose I'll have it forgotten tomorrow again. And Desi said to me, well, why don't you write it down? And I said, that would be a sensible thing to do, is to write it down. So I wrote that tune down. I wrote the tune down, and then I thought of another tune, and I wrote that down. So I was talking to Desi again, and I said, you know, I've written down a good few tunes. And Desi said, well, if you don't do something with them now, that's no good. And he says, you'll forget them again. And he said, couldn't you make a book out of it? Oh, well, no, maybe you could, but I'm afraid I don't think there would be a book in my head. That's what you think. And you know, it came into the winter time, which is a kind of a time that I'd have nothing to pass the winter, because I wouldn't be out an awful lot, and I started on this writing tunes. And I was at it every night. I was at that, and it was just a wonderful pastime. Absolutely great. And Desi was delighted when I told him I kept doing this thing, and I tell Desi, you know, now I have so many tunes down, and I have this, and he was delighted that I did it. So I got as far as getting 90 tunes. But I thought that was all the tunes I had. But that wasn't all the tunes I had. So then that was that. There's 90 tunes in that, but there's also little bits of stories and stuff in it as well, and things about people and whatnot in it. And then it was not very long ago, it was P.J. Hernan that said to me, you know, I thought, this winter I have nothing to do now. Can't you write another book? You know? And I said, no, I don't think so. Well, you could, he said, couldn't you write another one with doing the tunes that you didn't put in the book you've done? And I thought, I suppose I could do that. And most of them would be very common tunes. Most of them are tunes you don't hear. There's a lot more new tunes now, and they wouldn't be there. But I enjoyed doing that. I really did. Fate is strange. I hope I don't forget these things now. The man who brought that home from the States was the name of Tom McDonough. And he was an uncle of my husband Joe's. But I don't know if Joe had known him before or not. But he came home with that. Now, the house he came to, that he was staying in on holidays that time, Mrs. McGovern, she was a niece of Coleman's. But she sent me a message to come up to her house on a particular evening or night or whatever it was. She said, I have a surprise for you. And she didn't tell me what it was. So I went up to the house, and this was the surprise, was this fiddle. And it was left on the table in the kitchen. So at that time, there was I don't know who the person was, there was some other person in the house. And I can remember this now, the house, I don't suppose anyone living in that house now. But the house this was again, in most houses, a lot of these things were happening in the kitchen. They wouldn't be happening in parlours or that. And there was a radio on a shelf up high on the wall. And there was this guy, if I can, I don't think I knew him, and he was doing something with something on the table. I really don't know what he was at, and he said to me, "If you get that fiddle and play a tune on it, you'll hear yourself on the radio." And I thought this fella was having me on. And I thought, first of all, and he said to me, play a tune, and you'll hear yourself on the radio. And I thought, this fella thinks I'm daft or something. But anyway, I did. I took the fiddle out of its case and played the tune on it, and honest to God, I heard it on the radio. I thought, this was magic. This was really magic. And I couldn't, and then he kept saying to me, oh, go on, do another one, And I think I played 2 tunes or something. And I heard myself on the radio. And that to me, that was magic. I'd never seen anybody do things like that. Even at this stage, now I'm 87. And I don't think anyone could have had a better life than that.